every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
You need the right people in the right place at the right time. And sometimes you have the right people in the right place, but at the wrong time.
I've got to keep going forward. I've got to keep looking for revenue streams. I've got to keep looking for growth, keep looking at new ways of doing things.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. On this episode of Scale Up Radio, I talk with Simon Washbrook, and Simon is the founder of Popcorn CRM, a simple-to-use CRM platform designed for small businesses. So in basic terms, it's all about helping business owners to keep track of their leads, their referrals, but all of those prospects that come in, and they do that through developing their own CRM program. And Simon himself comes from a marketing background, and it was his realization that small businesses need a CRM that met their needs and didn't overcomplicate things. And so the idea of Popcorn was born. And in the past 9 years, the company's grown to 7 employees, which includes 3 developers working pretty much constantly on the software itself and its progression. And he's just about to come out with a new version of Popcorn. Please don't think that this is a technical discussion, though. His experiences, challenges, and advice are fantastic and applicable to any of us in any industry. And we cover loads of ground, including things like the realization that every part of a small business, the beating heart of it is in sales itself, how important it is to have a daily meeting and for that meeting to be part of a larger flow, a larger rhythm, making sure that the team are all working to the same time frame and on the same things. And when it comes to recruitment, finding a balance between budget and requirements. And if you're led too much by budget, then you won't find the right person for your team. And we cover loads of other things, including why he came up with the name Popcorn. And Simon is very honest about his role as a business owner. He doesn't shy away from some of the mistakes that he's made and the challenges that he still faces now. So this is a great discussion that we can all learn from. Welcome to another episode of Scale Up Radio. I'm here with Simon Washbrook, who is the founder of Popcorn CRM. Simon, welcome.
Hi there, Kevin. Thank you for having me on here.
No, looking forward to it. So, Popcorn, what's that all about?
Well, Popcorn, can be described quite simply. Popcorn is a simple-to-use CRM platform that's designed specifically for small business. Now, what that means, because there's a lot of people that use that sort of language, what that means is we've kind of cut out all the bells and whistles that a lot of CRM platforms have. And we've got just the essential bits of tools in there. So that allows you to track, manage, and nurture all your prospects a lot faster. And what that then means is your sales take off.
Okay.
So in essence, to give you a bit more of a hands-on description of it is, small businesses have leads coming in from absolutely everywhere. And whether that's LinkedIn, whether it's networking meetings, whatever it is, they're just coming in all over the shop. And a lot of them keep them stored in different places. What we do is we give them a really simple and clear visual way to manage them through that process. We've then got the tools in there so they can nurture them through the process, whether that's email marketing, lead scoring, tracking, and prospect identification, all that sort of stuff. But then, because they get that visualization, and we move people's data from being sort of this anonymous list to being Tom, Dick, and Harry, they see the bigger picture of what's going on around individuals, so they convert them faster. So that's what we do.
Sounds great. And it must be a fairly crowded marketplace. I mean, there's free CRMs, there's very expensive CRMs. So what are some of the challenges that you're facing?
If I turn that round, if I can, and I would put it to what users face. I feel like I sound like a politician now, don't you?
I'm glad you asked me that question, but what you really meant to ask me was this.
Because it does relate to me, Dorothy. I promise I'm not dodging anything here. What it is customers choosing the right CRM that's for them. So typically there's 3 reasons people go into using a CRM. Is 1, they need to manage the sales process. 2, they need to manage operations, so projects. Or 3, they just want somewhere to dump all this stuff in one place so they can always find it and they don't get duplication and that sort of stuff happening.
Yeah.
If you understand that, it can help you choose the right CRM.
Okay.
And then after that, I kind of look at it again as there's 3 levels of CRM you can choose. So these are very quick, simple ways to answer. But you've got sort of that, in sort of the first category, you've got, and I'm waving around with my hands here, I'm glad nobody can see me, but you've got the specialist software. Now, specialist software, that's things like MailChimp, Trello, ActiveCampaign, things like that, spreadsheets, which are brilliant at doing one job. Absolutely spot on it, but they've kind of bolted a CRM on, or people use it as a CRM, but it's not designed for it. So what happens then is they end up having loads of bits of software, things all over the place, and data gets duplicated, they lose sales, miss opportunities, that sort of thing. And then they kind of go, right then, you know what? I'm going to put my focus in on this, and I'm going to change what I'm doing. And they go and jump straight over to the opposite end of the spectrum, and they go and use a bit of software like HubSpot, Salesforce, Zoho, Sugar, those sort of bits of kit, which are brilliant bits of kit, but they aren't actually designed for small businesses. They're actually designed for much larger businesses with layers of management and that need 101 features. And what happened? Right. Yes, they're very good, but for a small business that's been using this simple bit of kit, which takes them seconds to use, it's a huge culture shift. And because of that, 72% of users give up using CRM. It's just overloaded, too many features, too complex, all that. So that's your 2 outlying sort of categories. Then you've got the middle sort of category. And that's predominantly occupied by people who, especially software and bolted the CRM, have grown into it, or people that want to become advanced software and have just bombarded it full of loads of features. And the outcomes of both of those are exactly the same, is they're too complicated and too expensive. So to answer your question, the problem I have is people choosing, I did get to the point, is people choosing the right software for them. So for us, it's about finding people who want to manage their prospecting process, and we've got all these leads, all these prospects, these opportunities, these contacts. How the hell do I turn them into customers? And then it's about finding someone that just doesn't want to waste their time with all the extra features. They want someone who just does the job. So that's our thing, really.
Great. So what's your typical client, or your ideal client? What sort of size would they be, do you think?
Easy way to describe is they go up to a company that's up to about 25 employees.
Yeah.
We've got one-man bands in there, where the sweet spot really is probably 5 to 10 employees.
Yeah.
That's where they really get it, because at that point, the owner of the business is usually quite hands-on, and they're especially in the sales process. So what we do is we give them that we visualize the process for them and bring it all together so they can start stepping back. So whether they've got a salesperson, customer service, but it means that at one glance they can go, that's where everything is. I don't need to stress. I don't need to panic. That's where everything's being dealt with, and that's what we're going to do next.
And that chimes with what we know about the scale-up journey and some of the research that we've done with business owners, that at that stage of the business, it's It's finding a way to make sure that you've got a consistent lead generation approach, and that is working for you is the biggest challenge typically that comes out at that stage of the business. So absolutely, I can see how that would work. Of course, the flip side is, of course, they're not particularly large businesses necessarily with a big wallet. So that's, again, is one of your challenges there, is to make sure you're providing a value for money solution, presumably.
Yeah, so the one thing I would say, it's kind of going from your that scale up journey, and it's a bit of a, when I realised this, it's a bit of a scary stat. A business that gives up using CRM, and this is an established small business, typically loses £7,000 every year.
A business that gives up using a CRM, did you say?
Yeah, sorry, gives up using CRM, doesn't track their prospects.
Right.
Loses, I think, it loses £7,000 every month, not a year.
Every month, yeah. I was going to say it must be quite. I would have thought it was bigger than. Yeah. Okay.
It's a lot of cash these businesses are using for not doing it, and it's kind of give you context. One of the things we put in place here. Anybody think I primed you for this? Thank you, by the way. We've put together a promise, because one of the biggest reasons people, apart from complexity, give up using CRM is the fact that they're being tied into long contracts, so 2 years, whatever it is. There's loads of hidden fees. There's the cost goes through the roof when it just doesn't need to. Yeah. So from our point of view, 30-day rolling contract. So people only stay with us because they want to, because they love us. There's no hidden fees. So what you pay for, you get everything in there. You can choose to upgrade on something, but that is only if you want to use extra of something. Yeah. And no setup fees in there as well. So it's just about going, right then, what stops people from doing it? And we've tried to remove all those hurdles.
Yeah, sounds excellent. Sounds really good. So can you give us an idea of the scale of the business? What sort of stage have you got to?
Okay, so we started off with a business idea about 9 years ago. It's been an interesting journey. But we came up with a prototype for a couple of years, which we got working. We pushed out into the marketplace and got some great feedback. We did version 1 of the platform, and we're just about to launch version 2 of the platform now. So we've kind of listened to what people are wanting and rebuilt around that. As the part of that process is, I wouldn't say we've stepped back from sales. So the company itself there's 7 employees in total.
7 employees, right? Yep.
We've got 3 devs in there as well. So just permanently working on the platform and developing it. We've probably got about 350 users on the platform. So it's not big numbers, but we wanted to keep those numbers down, ready for this transition to the new platform, because it's going to be, it's going to be good. But we've got where we are now to where we are going to be in the future one. And this is in fact, I'll tell you what, I haven't formally announced this anywhere really. So
have we got an exclusive?
You have actually, yes. Don't tell anybody. Shh. We're working in conjunction with Free Agent, which is the UK's largest small accountancy software. Yeah. And we're going to become their CRM partner.
Great.
So everything's geared up, ready for this launch.
Very exciting. Very exciting. So we should pursue that a little bit more in a moment. But that sounds like a very good opportunity and a significant next step for you. Very good.
Yeah. So it's everything's geared up, ready for us to scale on quite a decent scale. That's repetition. Sorry.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So what got you into doing Popcorn or launching a software CRM for small business owners? What got you into that?
Okay, so I would say it's a bit of a different journey, but when you speak to entrepreneurs, they've always got a journey, haven't they? That's how they've got there. So if I give you in a nutshell, when I was at uni, which it was a few years ago, might surprise some people, but I studied fashion and textiles.
All right.
So last thing I ever wanted to do, by my second year of my degree, I was thinking, do I quit? What do I do? Not right for me at all. And they launched the marketing modules there. And people have always fascinated me. What motivates somebody to do something? What drives somebody has fascinated me. As a child, I used to sit in McDonald's watching people walk past the window and going, just observing. I love
people watching, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was doing that. Got learned about marketing, went to do a postgraduate, ticked all the boxes, just focused on marketing the whole time. Then got my first full-time marketing job. And it was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And I got to the point where I was working at BMW Group.
Okay.
And in there, and the division we were working in was doing CRM integration. So I really saw the power of what CRM can do for a small business. Sorry, not for small, for large business. They were working with big corporates. And I just made a decision to set up on my own. And this was 16 years ago. And I set up as a design and marketing agency, design marketing consultant, kind of working specifically with small businesses because that's what I love. I love getting hands-on.
Yeah.
And I realized then that as over the next few years, they all needed CRM and none of them actually used it. And they all want every single bit of activity that a small business does, whether it's their phone, answer phone, whether it's their email marketing, whether it's whatever it is, everything's geared up for sales because that's what is the beating heart of every small business. But when you looked at the CRM, the marketing software out there, it wasn't joined up with sales. So I started working with clients and going, right, then we need to if we put this into a spreadsheet here, and I'm not a spreadsheet guy, I'll be very clear. But I started putting them into spreadsheets and I started to show the bigger picture of what was going on. And people really liked it. We started generating really good prospects, but because it wasn't what I enjoyed, it was taking up far too much time and I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
But I saw the opportunity. So that's when I kind of came up with the idea for what Popcorn should be. And I kind of conceptualized it and went, right, if we could do that, that would be brilliant because there's nothing there in the marketplace that does it sensibly for small business. And so that was the working prototype, which went down really well. And to the point now, as you asked about results, the platform now typically generates a return on investment of £185 every pound spent. And we increase sales conversion rates by 200%, and we save salespeople 25% of their management time.
Wow.
We've got some decent metrics coming from it at the moment.
Yeah, and they're figures that most of us can only dream of achieving. You know, if we all knew that for a £1 investment we could get £185 back, we'd be we'd all be laughing.
We have proved it on multiple times.
Very good. Excellent. So I'm going to, I think I can sense the answer to this already, but what do you love about what you do? What drives you? What excites you the most? What do you love about it?
I love to know that, and if it sounds cheesy, I apologize because it's not meant that way, but I love to know I've made a difference.
Okay.
Because I was talking to somebody this morning. They were a new customer to us a couple of months ago. When they came on board, they were quite apprehensive because they'd never done anything like this before. And so ran through a demo, handheld them a bit, and they signed up. And they were still being apprehensive. One of the things they were doing as part of the process was they were using an email marketing tool. And they sent it all out and did a touch base with them. This was about a month or so ago, followed up today, and they just said the phone hasn't stopped ringing. And we've now got intelligence on all these different people. We've got this many people in the pipeline. And you know, when you have one of those moments where you sit there and you smile and kind of go, my idea from all that time ago has done that.
Brilliant.
And it's such a heartwarming moment to know that I've made that difference.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's flip it around then. What frustrates you the most? What drives you crazy about what you're doing?
Oh, you're not supposed to ask questions like that. Okay, so what frustrates me? Development, software development, really.
Right,
because you ask anybody that's done software development, they will tell you 101 stories about what they've done. For me, my approach towards, I know somebody who used to have a software company, they're very successful in it. And I remember talking to them about this and saying, the developers never hit deadline. It's really frustrating. And I factor in extra time for it. And I do all this, but they never get there. And it really drives me potty. And they just turned around to me and went, allow double the time scale, because it's better that they don't rush it and they get the job done properly rather than force it through, and you end up having a load of problems which impact the user.
Yeah.
And since I've taken that approach, yeah, it does get annoying, does get stressful, but you can rationalize it a lot better.
Yeah. There's what was it somebody said to me? You can have things done well, you can have things done cheaply, and you can have things done quickly, but you can only ever have, is it 2 of those? I can't remember now. It's something like that. You can't have all 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I remember, digressing here, but I remember having a building project, having a builder in, managing a project, and I was getting really frustrated with it getting behind time. And he had basically that same answer that you've just given. I said to him, "Come on, we're behind time. When are you going to get it done?" He said, "Well, do you want it done properly?"
Okay,
and it's so frustrating because there's nowhere for me to go with that. You can't argue back either one way or the other. You just got to kind of go, shit, I'll have to accept that.
Yeah. But I tell you what, the one thing, if I was going to talk about a learning from it, and that's a bit of a cheesy phrase again, but the one thing I've learned, and I'm very controlled over now, is project management.
Right.
Because that moment where you're pulling your hair out because you've said to the builder, how long is it going to take? It'll take 2 months, mate. And 3-4 months later, they're still going on stuff. The problem is they've and I'm just using you as an example here, but is they've kind of, and I find this with developers all the time, is that they're always optimistic, or they don't necessarily see some of the pitfalls in there. So from a software point of view now, I manage that really tightly. And every single morning with my developers, I have a stand up, everything's time scaled, and I'll be tracking what have you been doing, how long this has taken, all those things, just to make sure that we're on track. And if we're not on track, why are we not on track? What can we do to fix it?
Excellent.
And that's been the big learning I've had around software developers, is just be on top of your project management.
Yeah, and a great illustration of how powerful that daily huddle or the daily stand-up can be used in the right way.
Yeah, and you'll know this because I know you've talked about it before. But from a team building perspective, it's just gold dust for you.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Good. So you had this vision back 9 years ago or so. So how did you? Software development sounds like that's going to be expensive. Did you manage to? How did you fund it in the early days?
We've pretty much, for the first few years, I still had the marketing business.
Okay.
So I funded that. We built up a war chest which kept us going, and then we've gone through a self-funding route. So we've got to the point where we've got users on there which they're able to afford to do things each step. So it's been a slower journey.
Yep.
And you do often think, would it have been easier if I'd gone down the investment route? But yeah, it's been a slower journey, but we've got there. And I think having that time as well I'll go back to give an example. I've got a marketing background, but you can't, and I know we've had this conversation in the past, you often can't see the wood for the trees.
Mm-hmm.
So I developed this brilliant idea for what I wanted Popcorn to be. And I started promoting it out and talking to various people, and I was getting some really nice engagement. And it wasn't until about 2.5-3 years ago that I had the realization I'd been calling it completely the wrong thing. And because I'd been calling it X, nobody got what we were talking about. So it was a bit like pushing water uphill. So literally just before the start of the pandemic, I went through and I did a complete rebranding exercise on the company. So everything from website through to messaging, through to visuals, through all aspects of it, we just repositioned the whole company. And if I'd gone down the investment route,
right,
would have I identified that, or would it have been killed in the water? I don't know.
That's interesting.
Taking that slowly catchy monkey approach has enabled to see us and grow, allow the product to evolve around what customers' needs are, because rather than just going, I've got this great idea, let's go.
So that's a really good point on the. So strategically, essentially, you realised that the positioning wasn't, or the messaging at least wasn't quite right around it. So what can you be more specific with that? Would you mind? What was it that you changed from and to?
Okay, so when I first started off, the one thing I used to do a lot of for people was email marketing. So at the very start, the heart of the platform had email at the heart. It was CRM on top of it, and this, that, and other stuff. But so I called ourselves an email marketing platform. So everybody just went, but I can get that free with MailChimp. Yeah. As soon as they used it, they got it. Yeah. But now what the journey I went through is that email, and now the way the platform's built, email is there, but it's just an element of it. What people use it for is the lead management side of it. So it's kind of going, I've got this database of people, but who actually wants to buy? Who's in that buying cycle? The software now kind of, it's got algorithms in there and stuff to kind of go, you've got 2,000 people in this list, but you need to speak to Tom, Dick and Harry because they're in the early stage of the buying cycle. They're a hot prospect and they get flagged up, put straight into pipelines, and then you manage them along that pipeline. So you always know where everybody is and who you need to be calling. So email is just a small part of it now.
Yeah, sounds excellent. But you managed to turn it around essentially from positioning to, from the email marketing, which people perceived that they understood what that was and they could get it elsewhere and you weren't different, to really what the power of what you're doing is. Yeah, very good. And so what about...
As well as that, just to reiterate a bit on that as well, when I started looking at it properly, that's when I started taking the time out to kind of go, well, why are other CRMs, why do they all fail? I spent ages going around all the chat forums, all these places, and I just kind of looked at it. So that part of that pivot was also coming with that message of what we are, but also what we're not. And we've very clearly defined that now. So when people come to use us, they know exactly what they're getting.
Excellent. So in terms of the people then, so you must have had to change from with a marketing agency to needing to find a different type of person to work with you from the software. So how did you go about that? Because I'm guessing you don't have a software development background yourself, from what you said.
So I made a lot of mistakes, I think is the best way of phrasing it. And the best way. I learned a lot of lessons as I went through. And the first person I went to was somebody recommended somebody, and I went to them. With hindsight, I needed to work with a bigger agency. I need to work with somebody who had a team, resources to call upon, because Popcorn's a big old bit of software. And I started off with this one person who was working in their bedroom because I was budget oriented. So that's what my focus was. I didn't understand how simple it was. Yeah. So I started off with them, and then it was just a matter of going through and trying to find that right fit. But what I would say to anybody who's thinking of going down that software journey is choose your developers really carefully. And this will sound quite easy, but first thing I would say with hindsight and everything now is wireframe your platform up. Now, what that means is it's a really simple bit of kit. The one we use is a bit of kit called balsamic, as in balsamic vinegar. Okay. It costs something like £100, I think it is. But what that means is it's just a drag and drop going, I want a window there, I want a button here, and do it. You make the pages look roughly what they should look like, and then you can link them all. So you can go and go, click here, do this, and then you can go to a developer and go, that's what I want. Right. And this comes down to specification points. So the developer understands very, very clearly what they need to build. They can look at it, they understand, they can come back and quiz you. If I click that button there, what happens? And if this happens, it specifies all of that up for you. And then they can come back to you in a non-optimistic sense and go, this is how long it's going to take. This is what it is. Then in your head, you go, double that. And
all right, good. So how do you go about finding good people? What's worked for you?
For me, it was recommendation.
Okay.
But it's comes from experience about knowing the right questions to ask. And then you're going to ask me what those right questions are. And I'm going to stall whilst I try and think about them. But for me, it is the right questions that you need to be asking developers, because what you need to do is you need to understand, do they have the vision for what this project is going to be? Not just the nuts and bolts of putting it together, but do they understand how big it's going to be, how much support that you're going to need from them, one, to get it built, and two, once it's been launched, can they service you? Because the last thing you want to do is to be jumping from one dev to another devs, because you don't get consistency in code quality then.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, go and get references off them everywhere you can. Go and find every bit of code they've developed, find out the pros and the cons about them, and just research them to death to make sure that they're a fit for you. Because the last thing you want to do is jump out the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. And in terms of keeping control, you already mentioned the daily huddle, but how else do you manage to make sure that people are sort of doing the right things and doing them well on a consistent basis?
Okay, so to use your language, it's all about the rhythm. Okay. So for me, we have a daily stand-up. So I have a daily stand-up with the devs, as I've mentioned, and we're in that, the purpose of that, it's a 10, 15-minute stand-up where each dev goes quickly through what they've been doing, what they're going to be working on, any problems, any issues, anything that they need support around. That's the objective of that. We then have a daily stand-up with the team, which is based here in Birmingham, and we do very, very similar sort of thing with those guys then. And it's just about looking at how we can move forwards. But on top of that, then every single person in the team has a focus board. So the focus board sort of covers each single week what their sort of quarterly tasks are, and then we look at every single week what they're doing to move towards those tasks. Excellent. And then in each one, it's kind of going, right, have you achieved that? Yes, brilliant. What's next? No, why haven't you achieved it? How can we get you past to make sure you achieve it? So that's what we kind of do.
So you've got essentially a 90-day planning cycle where you're identifying the priorities by individual, and then breaking that down into actions that you're keeping track of on a weekly and a daily basis when it comes down to it.
Yeah, you say it far more succinctly than I do. Well done.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, good. And we've been talking about sales and marketing. What works best for you in terms of finding new customers?
So as part of this rebrand we talked about, the way I used to go about was networking. Going to all the various networking meetings and doing it, but I've only got so much time to leverage. Yep. So we're transitioning. It's not a straightforward transition, no think ever is, but we're transitioning to be inbound now. So we're putting a lot of time, a lot of effort into creating content. If anybody that's thinking about doing this, a brilliant book to read is a book called They Ask You Answer.
Ah, yes.
It says like you've read it. It's a brilliant book, but that gives some great advice on the type of articles to start writing and how to do it. We SEO all of those up, so those start, and that generates quite a bit of traffic coming into the website for us. And it's all about sort of the traditional sort of, what do you want to say, the new traditional. So it's all about PPC and all that sort of stuff, getting ourselves known. But again, the one thing that works really nicely, once they're on the website, they book a demo with us and we just onboard them. So what we find is that once somebody's gone through a demo and they've signed up with us, I think we're currently, after month one, we've got a retention rate of 85%. So we're doing quite nicely. But for me, because of that, the reason we do that is customer service. Yeah. So if somebody puts an inquiry into us, we're on the phone to them, and that's not to pressure sales them. That's how can we help? What's your problem? And then we'll just work with them. We'll support them. And if it's not a fit, I actively encourage a no, because I don't want to waste their time. But if they are a fit, we'll just get them onboarded. We'll then make sure they have a good onboarding session with us. They know exactly how to use the software. And then it's about touching base and every now and again go, how can we help? What are your problems, challenges you're facing? Okay. And as with the conversation this morning, which I referenced earlier, what have been your wins? And that's where you find some real lovely little golden nuggets.
Great. So on that, what would you say over the 9 years, what have been some of your wins, some of the things that you think you've got right and done well?
I would say from a marketing perspective, from a general perspective, I would say the biggest win is now understanding what my software delivers. With hindsight, I wish I'd spent more time on it before and looked at it externally. So what I would say to somebody else is, if they're going to go on this journey, is get somebody external to be doing it, not just yourself or friends or family. Get an external agency or somebody to work with you. Get a mentor, business coach. Do you know anybody, Kevin?
Not any good ones.
No, I didn't think so. But no, seriously, get that external perspective, because that's been one of the biggest wins. Is since I can see that, the cascade we've had falling out from that, which I mentioned earlier, is the free agent, which is going to be absolutely amazing for us. It's going to be amazing for free agent too, I'm sure. But it's just going to be everything that's fallen out from that has come because I've looked at the business differently and I've treated it differently because of that. And it's allowed us to grow and scale.
Because there'll be a lot of people probably listening to this thinking, you know what, it'd be amazing if I could form a partnership with somebody like Free Agent. How do you even start? How did you get them to know about you and start that conversation?
So networking, it's about finding the right person, following the trail. And if I was to say I started the conversation 6 years ago, and it's about just keep talking to people, talking to the right people, and understanding what it is people need, what's their why. If you understand that, it opens up conversations. And as with a lot of these big companies, and I'm not saying this about Free Agent because they've been very dynamic, but a lot of big companies, which you may have to go through first, they're like a cruise ship. To get them to change direction takes a long time. They're willing, but there's a lot of systems, there's a lot of people in place. So don't look for that immediate win. Keep focusing. So keep them in that pipeline and keep going. No, they need a phone, or you see, they need a phone call in 3 months in 3 months' time about X.
Very good. And again, look at the other end of the spectrum. So what sort of things would you say you didn't get right? Some things that maybe you think, oh, that was a howler, I wouldn't do that again, or
nothing. I'm perfect.
Indeed.
No, so I think the biggest mistake I've probably made, goes back to what I said earlier, is choosing the right developers.
Okay.
And that is the crux of it, because if you're building software, you're putting your heart, your idea, your dream, your living, everything into these people's hands. And if you're like me, I'm not techie, as in I couldn't code something for toffee. And it's taken time and experience to learn when something's right and when something's wrong. So I would go back to what I said earlier. We chose some developers who, and I won't name names, but who have taken advantage of situations. And it's about finding those right ones so that you don't have to stress about the job being done. You can focus on selling or do whatever you need to do.
Yeah. Okay. Other than maybe some obvious things like turnover and profit, perhaps, what are there any key metrics? What sort of key measures do you want to keep an eye on to know that you're on the right track?
So for me, so you're talking from my internal business perspective.
Yeah.
For me, there's one metric we monitor, and that's retention.
Okay. Yeah.
So typically, when I said it earlier, I said after month one, because you get a lot of people will sign to software and go, I'll give that a go. And they aren't being serious about it. They're just testing the water. And they don't necessarily always know what they're looking for, and it's part of that exploration process. But after month one, they've usually made a decision. So for me, as long as that retention metric is going up or level, I know we're doing the right thing. And that means the software's working right, which means the devs are doing a good job. We're getting the right messaging across. The customer service is working because they're engaging with people correctly. Everything's falling through into the right place.
Yeah. So you're actively month by month calculating your retention rates, essentially.
Yeah, completely. Because it's at the heart of it. That's what, if people don't stay with us, we've got to put loads of extra effort in sales and converting people, which is hard, as everybody out there knows. And I would rather retain somebody and them love it than have to go out and put 2-3 times as much effort. Well, it's about 6 times easier, isn't it, to retain a customer that is to win a new one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I'd much rather do.
Excellent. Well, that's a really good insight, and a really, yes, I can absolutely see that, a really, really important measure on the retention. Very good. So what does the future hold? And obviously you've got an exciting time ahead, but if you and I were sitting down having this conversation in 5 years' time or so, Simon, what has to have happened for you to go, yep, they were a success, they were a good 5 years?
Okay, so the vision for us is we aim to become the CRM for small business in the UK, and then moving internationally thereafterwards. So for me, that's where I know I've hit the goal. I often refer to things as in gold, silver, bronze, and you've got to always aim, from my perspective, I always try to think, aim for gold, because if you don't hit gold, not that I'm being pessimistic, but if you don't hit gold, you end up on the podium. So my objective is to become the UK's leading CRM platform for small business. Great.
And how will you know when you've got there? How will you define that? Is that in market share terms or something else? How would you define that?
When we've hit a certain percentage of users, a certain number of users.
Okay. And given that there's 6 million small businesses in the UK, how many are we talking about then?
It's quite interesting, and I'm not one for recalling stats off the top of my head, but I could be way off the mark here. It's quite interesting because when you names such as HubSpot, they, if I remember rightly, have only got about, I'm wanting to say, and I could be very wrong, he caveats this very strongly, something like 2,500-3,000 active users, paid users in the UK.
All right.
Now, I could be wrong on that figure off the top of my head, but what we've done is we've looked at some of the key, and I did this several months ago, which is why I can't remember it, but we looked at how many active users all of the key platforms are, and we sort of found that point where we know we need to hit.
Great. Good. So you'll know absolutely, be able to measure absolutely whether or not you've got there. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So a couple of questions that I like to ask everybody at this sort of stage, and we've covered some of these actually, but we'll just go over them again. So if you could go back to your younger self, what would your advice be?
There's 2 bits, but no, not to myself, because I would say there's 2 bits of advice I'd give to a young person. Is one, never give up. If you've got a dream and you know something's going to succeed, never give up, because there's so many people to stand in your way. You've got to have that belief to keep pushing, keep driving. So that's one thing. And I've always liked to think I've got perseverance, or I'm stubborn, depending on how you want to be. So don't suppose I'd naturally say that to myself. But the one thing I would say, which is kind of related, is as a younger child, is believe in yourself more. Doesn't matter what other people say. Believe in yourself. Know that you can achieve it within reason. Obviously, don't be unrealistic, but
excellent. Okay, good. And you've already mentioned one, but what book or podcast would you recommend? So you mentioned They Ask You Answer, which I think was Marcus Sheridan.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
And I'll be very honest. I tend not to read too much, but one of the things I do quite a bit is I spend quite a bit of time watching TED Talks, things like that.
Yeah.
So one of the ones and it's quite a common one, but the guy that got me into watching TED Talks, if somebody doesn't watch them out there, is Simon Sinek. and it fascinated me. His one all about managing millennials.
I've seen that. Yes.
So it was a very good talk. It goes, and if you think about what I said at the start, as in what fascinates me is people's motivators.
Yeah.
That completely keyed in with me, and it just the idea that I can sit down and have a snapshot of 10 minutes of something, and then I can go down and drill into it. That's what I really would recommend to anyone.
Yeah, and I'm sure anybody listening can find that simply by searching for Simon Sinek and managing millennials. I'm pretty sure it just comes up when you search on that. Yeah,
it's reviewed, I think, 1 or 7 million times.
Yeah, very good. And you mentioned something that again resonated very much with me when you were saying that people end up with lots of different bits of software or apps or whatever else to do specific tasks, and then finally they've got all of these things stuck together by Band-Aid or whatever else, and there comes a time to consolidate it. What sort of, other than obviously Popcorn itself, but what sort of bits of software or apps have you found to be particularly useful? You mentioned a couple actually, with the wireframe, I guess would be one of those. What other sort of things would you?
Yeah, so Balsamic's the wireframing software.
Balsamic, yeah.
I suppose there's two things. One, from a project management, the one we use and I really like because it's simple and it joins the teams up, is a bit of software called ClickUp.
ClickUp, okay, yeah.
So we really like that. It's great, it's simple, everybody can use it, and it follows the same similar mentality to Popcorn. Actually, it's all about boards and dragging and dropping and be very visual. And the other one I would say, which for anybody does graphics, and we used to use Adobe all the time. So Photoshop,
Adobe, yeah.
But we've discovered a new one called Affinity. Well, not new; it's been around years, but Affinity. And they do pretty much exactly the same as Photoshop and all those things, but not without the extortionate price tag. So again, following Popcorn's mentality, simple, sensible pricing structure, not tied into contracts with it or anything. And great bit kit. So that's 3 I'd recommend: Balsamic, ClickUp, and Affinity Designer Photoshop. Those ones.
Perfect. Very good. Very good. So I think that's been a really good conversation. Lots of really good practical tips for people and a great insight into your journey. If people would like to get hold of you, Simon, or of Popcorn itself, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
2 things really. The main one I'd say is go to our website, which is popcorncrm.co.uk. I'll say that one again. popcorncrm.co.uk.
Is that popcorncrm.co.uk? Yeah. I
don't think you quite said it right. It's popcorncrm.co.uk. Just clarification. So that's the main one. And if you go on there on the homepage, if anybody's interested in finding more, there's a great 60-second video which shows what we do, but underneath there's a book a demo button or get started at the top. So, or they can search for me on LinkedIn, Simon Washbrook, and connect with me there.
And one final question that I should have asked right at the beginning.
What was our domain name? It's Popcorn CRM.
That wasn't going to be at this time, but why Popcorn?
Popcorn. Okay, so I've got 2 answers if you want. Do you want the marketing or do you want the honest answer?
Let's have both.
Okay, so the marketing answer is Popcorn. It helps all your leads pop out in front of you.
Okay.
The honest answer is it's a great name. But I've worked in marketing and I've done branding exercises with many businesses. And so I understand the principle of what a brand name should be about and the messaging and all that sort of thing. So I didn't want anything that was descriptive, all those sort of things. So I sat down with my dearest lovely wife one night with a bottle of wine and a pin. And we went through the dictionary finding words which fit that methodology. And then, is there a domain name available?
All right.
So it was a good, probably 2 or 3 evenings of sitting down and trying to get that. And we went through so many variants, and it isn't easy. But yeah, I'm really happy. I've always been very happy with the name Popcorn.
Great. No, it's a great name. I'm dying to ask now then, was there a second choice? And what was it?
Do you know what? It's 9 years ago. It was obviously inferior.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Brilliant. Simon, it's been great fun. Thank you very much for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today.
My pleasure, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Don't forget to take a look at www.bizsmarts.co.uk to access a great range of resources to help you in your scale-up journey. So that's bizsmarts.co.uk, which is bizsmarts.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.